So, assuming you've already bought a license for Runecraft Community Engine and you've installed everything correctly, the first thing you're going to want to do is open up your project folder and find the project manager. It's a sort of, I don't know, extra thing you can use on the side to try and keep everything organised and stops you from searching through folders, I suppose. You don't have to use it. I'm going to use it on principle's sake because it is technically part of the engine. You got various tabs for different things. But the one you'll be using the most is the project tab, where you've essentially got lots of different buttons to launch different pieces of software. And essentially, I'm going to run through, well, hopefully every feature of the engine, and that's going to take a while. Basically, like zone design, actors, scripts, quests, various stuff like that. And the first thing we're going to get started with is actually building a zone. And we don't actually need to launch the engine to get started with that. We can go straight to the terrain editor for that. And let that launch. Right, once that's ready, you have a sort of, I don't know, grey looking square thing. It's actually yellow because it's made of sand, but hey. First thing is camera. If you hold down your spacebar and you press the left and right mouse button, you can actually zoom in and out and move around, which is very helpful. You can actually adjust your camera speed and how far you can see at one point down the bottom of the two sliders. Unless your computer is really awful, I don't really see much point of changing the camera range. Just dump it on max. Basically, it's like a fog system, and frankly, it's horrible. I don't like working with it whatsoever, but some people like that, and I personally think it's terrible. So yeah, just shove that on max before you get started. Down the bottom left, you've got 6 different boxes with different textures, and these are your different layers, essentially. They are in a particular order. I don't know what that order is. I just know there's one rule you must always follow, otherwise you'll start having problems with water, is that your first texture, one on the top left, needs to be the texture you want for underwater, like bits. So if you got a little pond and you wanted that to be sand underwater, you put it sand. If you wanted it to be dirt, you put whatever that is. That's not dirt, never mind. So yeah, I'm going to change the sand texture because the default one's pretty disgusting. Next up, on the next two, I personally recommend putting some form of grass on there. Those look decent. Yeah, I don't know. You've also got the choice of JPEG or PNG for textures. You can just throw those into a folder somewhere. Open them up. And last two. What do we got? I don't know. That looks ishy. That one. Right, so at the moment all we've got is a square of sand which is completely flat and frankly horrific. First thing to notice is this weird yellow pillar stick thing with a red circle around it. The stick thing, well, funnily enough, is your cursor. But no, that is the actual height of the player in that zone. So, if you were playing this right now, testing in game, you'd be about the size of that stick. It is helpful, allows you to scale textures a lot better. And the red ring about it is the actual size of the brush, which you can adjust again with the sliders here. So you get a bigger ring. And then you've got your speed, which is how fast something takes place. Yeah, first I'm going to jump into paint first, because you don't have to do this. I personally find it a lot easier. It's sort of a planning stage, I suppose. Essentially, I'm going to draw an outline of what I want this zone to look like, roughly, with different textures. Before we do that, though, we need to actually set the scale of this zone. So you can either do it by going up to Edit and then Scale Up, or you can press, if you've got like a number pad thing, you can press the plus symbol and that will increase the zone. Same, you could do minus, go smaller. So yeah, I'm going to scale that up a bit. Yeah, that's quite big actually. It's not going to be a massive zone, relatively small. Turn down the brush size slightly. And I'm essentially just going to have sort of I don't know, green, grassy, woodlandish area with a house or two in there. Something basic, just a zone to demonstrate what you can do, and then you can develop your game as far as you want after that. It's up to you, really. So, I don't know. Let's have a general shape. First, you can increase your brush speed for this, because otherwise it'll take quite a while. I'm going to increase the size slightly. There we go. This looks pretty terrible. Wow. That is awful. So, I'm going to start again, actually. You can swap your textures, just literally go over there and click to actually draw the textures on or paint them on. You literally hold down right click. That's pretty much it. Right click and move your mouse around. Yeah, let's have it like that, why not? It's literally going to be, I don't know, house here, forest, way out, nothing special. That's pretty much the outline, and the rest of it's going to be some form of hillish thing, I don't know. Not being very space friendly, I suppose. Cut that down a bit. There you go. Yeah, it's quite easy. Well, it is easy. Literally, there you go. You've got a rough outline, and frankly, at the moment, it's completely flat. So now we got our outline done. We want to. At the moment, I'm in the Paint tab, top right. Switch to the Edit tab. And here we got loads of different checkboxes, and that's to select the different tools. So you got your raise, lower, pull, push. I don't really recommend using pull and push; they're kind of useless. Well, you can use them, I suppose, if you want to. It just drags it towards the camera, or pushes it away. The most useful ones you're going to use is raise, lower, smooth, and flatten. Yeah. Smooth brush probably the most useful out of all of them. Otherwise, everything is going to look incredibly clunky. And frankly, that is pretty much horrible. First thing I'm going to do actually is load up the flatten tool. Now, this quite literally flattens things, but what you can do using the scroll on your mouse is adjust the height at which it flattens things. That's that blue cube thing, and you can always reset the height at the top. There's a button that says reset flatten height there. That'll reset it back to the bottom, but yeah. Generally, we've got quite a big space. It doesn't look very big, but it is generally quite big. First thing I'm going to do is raise the land a bit, just around there. Holding down the right click. You don't have to be filling up every gap. And what you'll notice is that actually that's moving up. And at the moment it does look incredibly square and cliff-like and frankly awful, but I will fix that momentarily. Let's bring that up a bit more actually. Basically fill that out around the edges, nothing too fancy. The reason why I'm using this flatten tool instead of the raise tool is it actually allows you to put a bit more, I'm not entirely sure what it's called, a bit more structure to your scenery, I suppose. It's a lot more controlled, it can look a lot more layered, I suppose. I don't know. Just generally raise everything up there. Let's do the same over here. Right. And once we got our first level done, we're going to add a second level, just slightly higher, behind it, not too close to the edge of the first, because otherwise you just get a completely smooth, flat gradient, which isn't great. So we got a rough shape. We got a few dimples here and there at different heights. I'm going to bring that up a bit. And it allows, when we smooth it out, it allows you to have a nice sort of cliff feel with the sort of flat sections, whereas with the raise tool it would just look incredibly, I don't know, bumpy. So move up even more, fill up the corners, leave a little bit of space between that and the gap, so you've left there. Don't go too over the top with it, that'll do for now. Oh, damn. There we go. Just fill that out. That's good. And we should have what's starting to look like hills. The terrible hills. They look absolutely horrific at the moment. But it's a work in progress, so bear with me. Bring that up. And put these to scale of the actor. They are generally quite big. I mean, this is your player down here. Look how tall they are in comparison. We don't want too much variation between different heights, so we're just going to boost this up a bit. And yeah, there we go. Now we're sort of getting this sort of shape we're after. Right. At the moment, now it looks incredibly square. Like, it doesn't even look at all realistic. It's frankly horrible. So what we're going to do is select the smooth tool, and we want this to be not too big, and we want to turn down the brush speed a bit because we don't want it happening instantly. What we're going to do is lightly go over that, and you'll start getting a much more realistic sort of thing. What you don't want to happen, which I've already done, clever me, is it being too smooth, because otherwise your player will be able to walk up it quite easily. It's not great. Let's turn down the brush size. Here we literally just want to make it stop looking so square. Bring that up. There we go. That already looks better. It does to me, I don't know about you. A lot to go still. When it comes to closer to the ground, you may want to increase your brush size slightly, otherwise the polygons are going to stick out, and that's not pleasant. There we go. Sort of getting a layered, cliff-faced sort of thing. That looks pretty awful there, but well, we're just going to ignore that. It's not too important. Yeah. Oh, well. Anyway, that looks decent enough. Doesn't matter if you've missed a bit, you can always smooth it out afterwards. There we go. So we got a general shape of terrain, and as you've noticed, we got our cliffs around the edge, which is nice, stops the player from walking out so easily. But at the middle, at the moment, it is completely flat. And I don't know about you, but it's very rare that you'll find in real life completely flat ground. It's always a slight incline of some form, like a small bump, a hill out here and there. So what I'm going to do is pick a slightly larger brush size like this and turn down the brush speed quite low, and I'm going to lower it. And this is not to make a giant, I don't know, ditch or trench. It's literally to make the land slightly uneven, so when you see it in game it looks a bit more natural. So, a bit random with that. We don't want to make, because of the scale, you also got to keep in mind the scale of this, because you don't want to make it so big that it looks like a giant lump just sticking out, I suppose, unless you're going for that, in which by all means go for it. I am going to keep a section of this flat, because I'm going to eventually put a house here, and uneven land is a bit horrible to work with when using buildings. There you go, that's sort of uneven, unbalanced, it's quite nice. Can't see it very clearly because of the sand texture, but hey. So, right, first thing we need to sort out after that is textures, because it's a bit horrible to work with things which just look like a desert mess. I'm gonna first of all select my grass texture and increase the brush speed to max. Brush size, that's too big. This is not, we're not being like artistic here, we are literally just painting in the different areas. Turn that up. This is just so it's easier for you to see what is what, and what is not, I suppose. That's one way of putting it. There's still a bit of sand left over. The sand does make a nice underlayer effect, I suppose, in this sort of zone. Wouldn't work really well with a snowy type biome. You don't really find snow and sand together very often. So we got cliffs, we got grass, we got a bit of sand around the edges. I have just decided I'm going to put a little bit deeper part in this terrain because I want a pond, and I'm going to put the pond in the corner here. So again, we don't want brush speed at max. Just turn that up. I'm literally going to paint a pond. In fact, what would probably be better if we use the flatten tool, scroll down, not too much, let's put it to there, and flatten it out. That's quite deep. Quite a big pond. Why not? Smooth it out. Doesn't matter if it's very steep, it's still quite low at the middle. Go back and paint, and we'll paint that sand. Yeah. Right, we've got a basic outline. One thing we need to include actually is a path, if you're going to have that. I am going to have a path. I'm going to select my path texture. I'm going to turn down the brush size because I want this to be fairly narrow. I'm literally, make sure you turn your brush speed up. I'm literally going to have a very basic path. I'm going to have it leading up to my house, which is going to be here, so I'm going to paint that there. And then pretty much nothing else to it, really. Put some trees over here later. Increase my brush size. There we go. We have a path. This is, well, yeah. One thing you've probably already noticed, if you haven't, well, it doesn't really matter if you haven't, is that your textures are completely out of scale with each other and with your actor. I mean, where would you find a rock with pixels on it? And that's what your player's going to see at the moment. Just a giant lump of pixels, and it's not pleasant. It doesn't look good. So down at the bottom, with your correct texture selected, you've got the scale up and scale down buttons. And this is literally to scale up and scale down your texture. So if you hold down the scale down and make it a lot smaller, this is where using seamless textures is a much better idea, because otherwise you see a recurring pattern. The player will see it. That's still quite big. You can still see the pixels down by his feet. And in here, it may look pretty damn bad. That's actually slightly too small. It may look pretty awful from a distance, but in scale in game, it'll look fine. And that's what really matters here. And I've just realised that is far too much stone. So I'm going to paint over that. Oh no. There you go. Cut that down a bit. Doesn't have to be very accurate. Okay, so that's done. We're going to do the next one. I suppose we do this, scale it down. Right down. Now, what you don't want to do, which I've done, this is a perfect time to example. This texture is not seamless, so you can actually see the different individual tiles, and if you zoom in from a player point of view, they'll see it as well. So if that happens, just scale it up slightly. If you don't want to change the texture, it's not too bad. Not exactly going to be zoomed in all the way, but it'll look like that roughly, so that's alright. Still, you can see the tiles, but it's nowhere near as bad as it could have been. We haven't actually put down this other grass texture, and I'm not happy about that. Now, I'm going to put this as like patches around the place. That's done where the sand is, why not? It doesn't have to be, it literally is just random patches. This is just, I don't know, have a line there. Nothing too fancy, just now, this is where I can really emphasise the fact that you need to scale your textures. In game, you'll notice already from resistance you can see the individual flowers. These are, I don't know what they're called, they're those little white flowers you find in the middle of nowhere. And frankly, that flower is about 3 times the size of your player. So, yeah, that scale's going right down quite a bit. Literally just going to keep going all the way down. That's far too much. If you ever think the camera speed's too fast, just turn down the style thing, move around slower. That's still quite big. That looks alright. And paint a bit more. Right, that looks fine. Turn the camera speed back up now. Next up is your cliffs. Now at the moment they look very bare, they're only one texture with a bit of sand. Sand shouldn't really be there to start with. So we're actually going to introduce your second rock texture. What I like doing is setting like a height level. So at a certain height you swap textures. I don't know if these will actually work well together. Not really, no. I change that in that case. Let's put it with that texture. That works a bit better. I don't know, you don't want them to clash too much. So at a higher, when it reaches the higher point, let's put it on these ones here, it's going to change to this texture. So we got ourselves a little rock variation. Okay, and still it looks, there's nice slight variation here and there for a little bit on top, but it still looks quite dull. And if you like that, and you can keep it like that, there's no one telling you can't. But on rocks, grass does grow, and so does various other things. So, hang on. What you can do, which always usually works out quite nicely, is paint grass on it on the flat parts. So let's just swap to our grass texture. Start with this one here. We got a flat section on top. We're literally going to paint that on all the flat parts. I'll have it so it's overlapping slightly. That brush is quite big. Oops, apparently not. It's too small now. Top. You want it to overlap, like just, I don't know, sort of go over the edge slightly. I guess grass would do that, I suppose. And once we got that, we got it looking a bit more like sort of plains biome, I suppose. I don't want to go into too much. It's a nice. It looks good. It looks a bit different, bit of variation, not too repetitive. And if you really want to, you can also put your second grass texture on there as well. I have patches over the edge. Dump a little bit there. You can actually put some flower models on top of that as well in the future. Alright, also, we should have done this beforehand really, the rock textures need scaling as well, so we can scale those right down. All these textures come with the engine, at least they should. This one's not seamless either, that's not very helpful. That looks alright actually. And the other one, it's quite cool to watch really. Right, we got something which is starting to look a bit more realistic. Now, one thing you've probably noticed, we've still got these perfectly flat things, and they're horrible, frankly, and it's kind of weird seeing completely flat on top, even if it is structured slightly. This is where we're going to use the raise tool. I don't know if the smooth tool will actually correct that. No, it won't, because it's so close to the edge, it decides it doesn't want to. It's so kind like that. So yeah, we're going to use the raise tool, and we're essentially going to add a bit of variation, and this we're going to turn the brush speed up quite high, but not to max. Nope, that is awful. If you make a mistake, you can't, okay. You can press U to undo, although it is a bit risky, since it's quite unlikely that will undo to the right amount of steps. You can always redo, and there's also the backup options here. You got undo, redo, so there's U for undo and R for redo. Make the brush quite slightly bigger than small, and that's smooth still, and raise it. Okay, it doesn't matter too much, that's too fast. Ah, balls, that's what I was talking about. If you press R, it should redo all the textures. There we go. It's like, too fast there. There you go. Don't go, try, when you're using it, try and place your cursor not at the edge, just slightly in front of it, because otherwise all you're going to do is raise the back even more, which is what you're trying to avoid doing in the first place. Here, we're just going to do that, cover that little speck up. It doesn't matter if it starts being pointy like that, you can smooth it out afterwards, but you probably have to. Don't just like follow the edge as well, put like a few down the middle. Here it looks pretty horrific, let's boost that up so we can try and hide that behind. And you'll probably create new surfaces where you can put some grass down if you want to, or more rock if you raise up the grass sections a bit. Yeah, we're starting to have something with a bit more variation, less square. It's just nice. Now we're going to use the smooth tool like before and literally run it. We're going to turn down the speed and just run it over things. And if the speed is too high, it'll just make it flat again, which is pointless. But if you do it at the right level, it's still quite a bit high. It smooths it out. Doesn't leave these massive points. This one's just being a pain. I'll show you how to remove that later actually. In a second. I did that far too quickly, but it still looks alright. just smooth, smooth, smooth. You can just click if you want to do a dabble. Now, if you've got these annoying peak things that won't go away, there is a very wonderful tool to help you get rid of them. It's not the best solution in the world, but frankly it works. And if you use it properly, players won't even notice you've used it. Or they won't notice you've used it unless they know how to use the engine, I suppose. Right, yeah, we still got those horrible random peaks. So we're going to get rid of them, and in the top left hand corner underneath file there's a paint hole option, and that will automatically lock settings in, so it doesn't matter, you can't change brush size, you can't do anything, it'll just snap straight back. You can change the camera speed and stuff. You need to be in paint mode for this to work, and automatically you'll notice it's ticked the use color box. And don't worry, essentially what you're going to do is paint purple on these bits, and what this tells the software to do once you're exporting it, exporting model, is all the purple parts, those polygons are not going to get exported, so they will disappear. Again, you can, if you really want to go poly saving, you can get rid of the ones down the back edge. I'm not going to bother, it's a waste of time. Don't make it anything too obvious, because you'll be able to see it otherwise. Here we really should use the raise tool. I'm not going to fuss too much on trying to get rid of these things for now, because this is a tutorial. If you want to, you can spend the time to try and get rid of them. But there you go, we've got quite a nice open field, planey style thing coming together. We're going to quickly jump back in paint mode, undo paint hole, and make sure you untick the use color box. If that's ticked, then it'll start using whatever you've selected in here instead of the textures. So I'm just going to go and redo some of these slightly. Turn it down. That looks alright, that looks alright. Put a little bit here. A bit here. It doesn't matter too much if you've got sort of sharp edges to your cliffs, because they are made of rock. It does happen in life. You don't want too many, because that will look weird. But the odd one or two, it can sometimes add to the scene, I suppose. I'm going to have this creep down slightly. It's not what I was trying to do. There we go. We've still got a bit of sand here and there, which is not nice, so we're going to get rid of that. Now, earlier I was saying you have to have your underwater texture thing to be the first one. The reason for that is there is an actual bug in the engine, which is not nice, and frankly we are trying to fix it, but it's easily avoidable. And essentially, when you're underwater, you pour a water layer down, it can sometimes mess up and start only showing the first texture, like the first layer texture, instead of what you wanted. So if the texture 2 was my sand and texture 1 was grass, and I went underwater, and even if I painted it sand, it would appear as grass, which is why you always put that on first. So it's good practice. I'm going to reconnect that a bit. Right, that's looking okay-ish. It's not the best work in the world. I've just noticed the sand texture hasn't been rescaled. Because I'm going for a sort of plainsy feel sort of zone, the fact that there's still some sand here and there is alright, although there's far too much. It's nice, it works quite well with the grass as well, and the way they're blending together. You can have random bits of sand if you want. Can't see there. Let's just make that entire cliff of this stuff. Patch of that. There you go, slowly coming together. We got our terrain done, I'd say. Right, and we're going to do a little bit of sculpting here. And you've been seeing sculpting the whole time, but what I mean is model work. Now, you can put models in this terrain editor, add it to your terrain, and you can still move them around in the game engine afterwards. I personally do not like putting models in the terrain editor, simply because they're a bit of a nuisance to mess around with, and a lot easier to place in the actual engine than in the thing. But yeah, you can continue to put them here, I suppose. There's a nice model brush tool, which I'm not going to go into because I don't personally find it very helpful. Although it speeds things up, it does make things look a bit chaotic, and it basically allows you to select random amounts of models and essentially just paint them onto your terrain in an area. So it's good for trees and stuff like that, and grass, I suppose. I'm actually going to choose a building, and I've just decided. Let's go with this one here. At the moment, right, you loaded your model, you right click, it dumps it in the zone. That's that red thing down there. Okay, that is your model selected. Make sure you got model picking on, otherwise you won't be able to select it again. And right now I can tell you can see it is tiny. Right, so at the top there's a button that says model move and scale. Here you've got different options. You can move it around, you can move up and down. Crap, why did I do that? I'm going to delete that. Put it down again. You can rotate it round. You've got different scales, but we're going to press this one. That scales it every direction. And essentially we need to get our actor to essentially fit that door, and frankly that's too big. That's kind of too small. That's going right. Yeah, if we turn down the brush speed, it should slow it down. Yeah, there we go. It's doing a bit more clunky now. That looks about right-ish. I don't know, straw bales usually that high. Turn down slightly. That looks reasonable. Okay, we're gonna move this now using these horrible buttons, and we're gonna rotate it around. In fact, we can have two buildings here. We're gonna put that in a corner somewhere. Notice there's a red box around it. That is because you have that specific model selected. Essentially, in this, I don't know, I suppose putting buildings in terrain editor makes sense. You can make the terrain fit tightly around them. We're essentially using this sort of stone thing as our base. Everything has to fit within it. Actually, I've changed my mind. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to shove it around here and put another building over there. Not very thrilling. Oh well. There we go. That's looking decentish, I suppose. This is the problem. See, now we got a slight imbalance of terrain. It's making things go funky. But that should be alright, actually. I'm going to leave it like that. No, I'm not. See, this is a problem. I can never make my mind up. Yeah, tuck it right in the corner, and then we're going to change the textures according to it, so they all look like they fit perfectly. That's alright. We can change the terrain a bit there. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go load another model. Again, in buildings, I'm going to have a different one this time. I don't want to have too big, since it's like a little village thing. Yeah, why not? Let's go with that. This one's huge in comparison, apparently. Where's the door? There's the door. Oh, that's utterly massive. But no, it doesn't matter too much if the buildings are slightly off. Slight variation in scales, always a bit nice. And we can just right click to select that again. Rotate it around and move it back. There we go. So we got ourselves 2 buildings. I would put a 3rd in, but actually we need to rotate that around a bit. Yeah, it looks nicer. Rotate that around. Move that one back. Try and get those things aligned slightly. You want to leave a bit of space, since buildings were never actually put too close together in medieval times. Try and stop fires from spreading. Of course they didn't learn that in London. There we go. Now that looks incredibly bland at the moment. You see we got just stone with, frankly, we got hay here. Oh Christ. Yeah, this is what happens when you don't switch into paint mode. Don't need that anymore. Back in paint mode, I'm going to paint some grass down here. You can put a hay texture down in the engine, I suppose, later on if you want to. We're going to cut this down. Right up. Get rid of this. Narrow it down. Just so that we have the stone for the town. Or little hamlet. And only for that. Otherwise it just looks incredibly messy. Now, you wouldn't have perfect stone, so if we turn down the brush speed and we just lightly dabbled, turn down that size as well, lightly dabbled, you get a little bit of grassy patches, probably nearer towards the edges of the building. Some dirt accumulates and stuff there, so the grass would grow there. Don't want the pattern to appear really, we just want it to be completely random. Turn that up, bring that up there. Slightly too much grass actually, and cut that down a bit. There you go, that's looking a bit more reasonable. We're going to cut that down, bring it back. Now, your path may look a bit dodgy, you can always just fix that, like dabbles. It's always nice to have a few gaps here and there, because these roads will be run down after a while. There we go, we've got a general path road thing building up. Again, yeah, this is looking a bit flat. What I'm going to do to add a bit more character, if we go back in edit mode, we go to the flatten tool, the first thing I'm going to do is reset the flatten height to the bottom, increase the brush size slightly, and I'm actually going to lower it ever so slightly. That's actually quite a lot. Is that really one click? If we turn on the brush speed, no, that's not helpful. No, actually undo that. Where's the flatten tool? Right. Reset flatten height. We're there. Huh. Well, that's annoying. Oh, that's because I've done that. Well done. Right. Doesn't have to be very precise. Just, you can either push it up or push it down. I personally prefer pushing it down. And the idea behind this is to show a little bit of wear into the... this isn't working. Why is this not working? That's because it's the same height. Oh, brilliant. What on earth have I done? I don't know. Be aware. Here, take it down again. That's frankly too high, too low rather, but oh well. You get a sort of trench-like thing. It looks awful. But what you can do is using the smooth tool again. You smooth that out, and you want to set that to max. Increase the brush size a bit. It'll actually level it off, but your path will be slightly lowered. At least it should be. Turn that down. 1. That's not working. It's too fast. The reason this just shows that people have been walking on it over time. It's just been slowly pressed down. Didn't really work. That's disappointing. Oh well. Let's just sort. I want to smooth out the land anyway. There we go. Just general terrain thing. I'm not going to do much. Well, we're pretty much done here, really. What was I going to cover? Yeah, last thing to cover is painting colours. I'm not all the extra model work, because I'm not going to leave this completely bare. Will be done in the engine because it's a hell of a lot easier. Yeah, we're going to do what's called colour mapping. And we're going to do it manually since I don't like using the default one. This is essentially where you're painting raw colours onto your textures, and this can go horribly wrong. So we're going to try and do it right. And with the plains biome, we're going for a greeny yellow sort of look. So yeah, go for a yellow look. We don't need it to be. In fact, we just select that and bring that to green a bit. Doesn't need to be perfect. Essentially, is that working? Use colour, brush speed. Yeah. If you do it, that's too green. If you ever want to like undo a section, you literally just have to select the white bit and just paint back over it. The idea behind this is just to add a little bit of colour to your zone, I suppose. Only lightly brush, don't go too hard, otherwise what will happen, you'll just get a giant yellow patch and it looks weird. It's not exactly what you're after. So yeah. To undo colours, you just simply wipe it out. That's the point actually. If you ever like painted a hole somewhere and it was a mistake, what you do is paint, untick that paint hole button, use colour, get colour and set it to white and make sure it's completely gone and it will ignore it and it won't delete it. We're going to be very lazy here, literally do mass painting. Slight dabbles, don't want it too much. And we're going to put a little bit of very light blue near the rocks. There we go. That looks alright. There's a bit too much yellow here, so I'm going to get white. You don't really need to do it with the sand because it's already such a natural colour. I suppose orange could work in some cases, but I'm not going to use that. But there you go, that looks alright. Last few bits. Terrain editing wise, it's done. That's as good as I'm going to get it. So we're going to press File and you're going to save it. And it's going to ask you to save it as a data file. This is essentially, it will create a new zone in the game editor. It will also export a model, so if you just want to use this as a standalone terrain editor, I suppose you could. I don't really recommend it, there are better ones out there. You don't have to use this terrain editor to make zones or terrains in the RCCE Engine. Use your own. I'm just going to call this forest. No, I'm not. I'm going to call this plains. I can't do very good spelling. I'm just going to hit save. It's going to ask you, do you want to encrypt the terrain? You do not want to encrypt the terrain. Very bad things will happen when you do that. So just press no, it'll freeze for a bit, then export, and then you're done. Okay, so you're going to file, exit, and don't need this anymore. Go back to your project manager, and you're going to launch the GUI. I'm just going to wrap it up for this video. And what that will do, the GUI is the Ground Unified Editor, and that will load up your engine. This is where you're going to put absolutely everything together. And because we use the RCCE Terrain Editor, it will automatically make a zone for us because we saved it as a data file. So at the top there's a tab called Zones, and you get a black thing, and you've got weird buttons here. At the right there's a drop down list, and this is all your zones you have there, and you'll find that Plains, as the one we just made, is here. And there it is. And yeah, there we go. If you notice, that's a bit of weird land. Okay, that needs smoothing out. What you can always do is literally, if you close the engine, actually don't, I'm just going to minimize the engine. Just reload your terrain editor. Because this exports to a data file, which means if you make any edits in the game editor, it will save it, and it can be read by the terrain editor. This does not apply for anything like actors or music zones or anything. It's basically literally as you make any changes in models, it will save it. So we're just going to smooth this out because that looked a bit clunky. Whilst we're in there, where's it gone? There you are. Anything else that looked weird? No. No. There's a little bit there. Right. There we go. And just smooth that out, and if you just hit File, Save, overwrite Plains, do not want to encrypt. If you encrypt, your game will crash. It was a feature for the original RCCE Engine made by Solstar, and it was an awful idea, but they did it anyway. And you'll notice it hasn't actually changed here. What you need to do is go on the drop down list and hit Plains again, and it will refresh the zone. And notice now it's all smooth. Okay, the purple is still there. That will not be rendered in game. Okay. Yeah, the lighting's a bit funny. We can fix that up, but for this video, that's all I'm going to show you. I'll go over on how to use the Zones editor in the next video, and we'll actually start putting scenery in, decorating it, and basically making it look like a real living thing. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I shall see you guys next time.